Hello students, this is a video that I'm making about TV revenue streams and streaming. I'm going to try and go over some information about the current state of the television industry. All right, first off, very quick overview of television history. I got this periodization of television history from a scholar called Amanda Lotz. Okay, she used the term the network era to describe the first couple decades of television, mid 1950s to mid 1980s, something like that. There were three major networks: NBC, CBS, and ABC. These were broadcast networks. They distributed the signal over the air to consumers who watched the programming for free. And there was a very limited amount of viewer control. You could turn the TV on or off. But there was really no easy way to record programming or watch things on your own convenience. Now, here's a concept. If you're not familiar with it, I'm going to try and go over it because it's key and it's very important to understanding some of the moves going on in television today. Syndication. Okay, this is an economic model to describe the way television programmings are sold to local television stations. Now, historically, back in the day, a producer needed 100 episodes of a show in order to sell it into syndication. It was very popular. Think about those sitcoms that were on every day of the week, like Brady Bunch, Gilligan's Island, when I was growing up. And then more recently, we've had Friends and That 70s Show and Seinfeld and things like that. If you had 5 days in the week to cover, 100 episodes would allow you to the shows could run for 20 weeks and then the cycle would repeat. Okay, so that was the goal. A show wanted to create at least 100 episodes and then they could sell them into the rerun market or sell it overseas, for example. Now, here's the key concept to remember. It is the production company that makes the show that makes the money in syndication, not the original network. Okay, so Friends aired on NBC, but when Friends was sold into the secondary rerun market in syndication, it was Warner Brothers that made a huge amount of money, not NBC. Okay, it was not NBC that made the money. It was the production company that made the money. Now, this is a really lucrative model. This is what people ultimately want to do. You want to create a show that's going to be so popular that you can sell it over and over and over again. I mean, think about I Love Lucy. Decades later, I'm assuming most people who are watching this video lecture are familiar with I Love Lucy and maybe you've seen some episodes. It's pretty astonishing that decades after that show was made, people are still watching it. And what that means is that if you create something like that, you can keep selling it over and over and over. I mean, if you've ever worked in a restaurant, you make a hamburger. Imagine if you could sell that same hamburger 100 times. That's going to be very profitable. Okay, back to history. We have the multi-channel transition period, mid 1980s up into the early 2000s. We have the rise of VCRs and then replaced by digital video recorders, DVRs. Now there's some viewer control. People can engage in time shifting. We have the explosion of cable. Cable is a different financial model. I'm going to go over that in a minute. Cable is a different financial model than the traditional broadcast television model. Okay, we have the growth of remote controls. This is something we typically don't think about, but remote controls change the way you watch TV. You're more inclined to flip around when you have a remote control as opposed to getting up, walking all the way across the room and changing the channel. And then in the broadcast era, you really didn't have many options anyway, so you might as well just keep on watching whatever channel you're on. Here are some key terms. All of these things will be in the notes as well. Okay, how cable works financially. You need to know the term MSO. This stands for multiple system operator, also known as a cable company. I believe they call them multiple system operators because Cox, that's who I pay for cable. Cox has franchises all over the country. So there's San Diego, Los Angeles, Phoenix, et cetera, et cetera. Same with Comcast or whoever else you pay for your cable service. But just know MSO is a multiple system operator. Another term is also MVPD, which I believe is multi-channel video provider. Anyway, you don't need to know that, but there's a lot of acronyms. Cable companies make money from advertising, and the cable channels specifically make the money. There are national ads on cable channels as well as local ads, but that's not really where the bulk of the money in cable is. We're talking now about subscription fees. Okay, the viewer who watches cable pays a monthly fee to the MSO. This is your cable bill, and these cable bills can be very, very high, and consumers have been protesting this for a long time, but there is a reason that they're so high, and there's a reason that it's very, very difficult to break up the cable packages. They, at least at the time of this recording, do not allow you to subscribe a la carte. You cannot subscribe to only the channels you want. You get a cable package that has 40 or 50 or 60 channels, and maybe you want to, oh, I need home and garden channel. I want the Food Network. Well, that's on the next package up, and now you're going to get an extra 40 channels just because you want that one. Okay, but that is the way subscription fees work. Here is where a lot of the money in cable is. These things are called carriage fees. The MSO pays a cable network a fixed rate per subscriber. Viewership is irrelevant. I know that seems a little confusing at first, but viewership is really irrelevant. If I pay, say, as an example, $100 a month for my cable bill, and ESPN is on the cable lineup, it doesn't matter if I never watch ESPN. It does not matter. ESPN gets a very high amount of money every month from everyone who has the channel available as part of their cable lineup. ESPN, in fact, has the highest, as far as I know, the highest monthly fee. Here is a chart. This is from September 2020. Now, this is just sports channels. This is only sports channels, but look at that. $7 per month goes to ESPN. And then we have TNT, the NFL Network, ESPN2, TBS, etc. So you look at that. TBS gets 99 cents a month from everyone who has TBS as part of their cable package. And the last term here is a retransmission fee. This is similar to a carriage fee. However, the retransmission fee goes to the local affiliate of a broadcast network. Okay, the big names, which maybe you know, CBS, ABC, NBC. There is also a Fox broadcast network distinct from Fox News, and there are probably a couple of other broadcast networks as well, but those are the ones that come to mind. When you turn on your cable TV and you're watching your cable package, if you're watching ABC or CBS or NBC, that signal is actually coming from the local affiliate. Now, you could receive that free over the air, but very few people watch over the air television. The cable company, the MSO, picks up that channel, the local broadcast channel, and sells it to you. In exchange for doing that, the MSO pays a retransmission fee to the local affiliate. Here is a graphic. This may be outdated. These numbers might not be accurate, but it gives you some sense of the growth of retransmission fees going from virtually zero in 2006 up to almost $12 billion by 2022. So what this suggests to me is that the broadcast television model, it's an old practice. People are not watching broadcast television, but the retransmission fee is a way to prop up that industry. Okay, now we're in the post-network era. No one knows what's going on, honestly. I mean, this is kind of a cliche image, a television set blowing up. There's DVRs, there's video on demand, there's online viewing. People can watch television on their phone. There's so many different financial models, and there's a significant amount of viewer control. You no longer have to watch something in the original time slot. You can time shift it. You can watch it later. You can buy it on demand. I took this photo myself a couple years ago. Millennials not watching TV. Apparently, whoever put this graphic together does not use spell check. And now we have all these streaming platforms. Okay, maybe you've been watching this video and saying, when the heck is this guy going to talk about streaming? Now I'm talking about streaming. Okay, and the traditional television industry is still trying to sort out, are these streaming platforms friends or are they foes? Okay, on one hand, it gives you a new venue to sell syndicated programming because Netflix and Hulu, they show these traditional television shows. So on one hand, that's a way to sell your syndicated product. It is yet another outlet. But also, it's a competition, right? You want, say you're NBC, you want people to watch your new sitcoms Thursday night at 8 or Thursday night at 9. You want them to watch the new police procedural you have that airs at 10 o'clock. But you've also got competition from Netflix that might be airing shows that you, NBC, aired 3 years ago. So, on one hand, streaming platforms are good. They're driving more viewership. People are consuming more media content, but they are also providing competition for all the new content. You should know the term SVOD, subscription video on demand. House of Cards really got a great deal of attention, and it's a great show. I watched it. It's a great show. It attracted a massive amount of attention for Netflix, drove new subscribers. Something else we associate with Netflix and all these streaming platforms is the concept of binge viewing. Consumers watching multiple episodes of a show all at once. Maybe you've never seen Breaking Bad, and then you got a week off from work, a week off from school, and you just binge and get through 3 or 4 seasons of Breaking Bad. Now, binge viewing is popular with consumers, probably popular with many people watching this video, because you don't want to wait a week. You just want to like get through it. What happens next? What happens next? And for very complicated narrative shows like Lost or something, you really do need to remember what happened in the previous episode. So binge viewing is kind of good for shows like that. However, some people also argue against this model, that releasing all the episodes of a show all at once is not a good way to drive viewership, because it burns out very quickly. And if you air something once a week and there's a great deal of anticipation, there's social media gossip, people, the proverbial water cooler, you're chatting, what's going to happen next? What's Don Draper going to do next? What's going to happen to Betty? You spend all week and it builds anticipation. And I actually got sucked into the show Empire a few years ago, which aired on, or maybe it still airs, I don't know, on the Fox television network. I got sucked into Empire because there was so much conversation on Twitter about Empire. I felt like, well, I have to tune into this. Some people who produce television content prefer the traditional once a week release schedule. However, consumers tend to like the give me everything all at once. And I think that's the way the industry is probably going. TVOD is another term. I actually didn't know this term until this morning when I was preparing for this lecture. Transactional video on demand. Think pay-per-view, which is very big with sporting events like boxing or a movie or something. You pay. This is not a monthly or an annual subscription. This is a one-time thing. Another term to know is AVOD, advertising supported video on demand. Think YouTube. Okay, YouTube is the best example here. It's free, but there's ads. And I think AVOD is growing. And I think I'm recording this lecture mid-February 2021. It's only a matter of time before ads show up on Netflix. Some of you are probably cursing or think I'm wrong, but I would bet money. I think advertising is eventually going to come to Netflix. Probably not inside the shows. Netflix is not going to interfere with a show and put a commercial every 7 minutes. But I certainly think that they would put them in between shows. If you're going to watch Bridgerton and you want to watch 5 episodes, I don't see why Netflix would not put ads in between the episodes. We have people who create content, okay? And historically, they would license it, almost like renting it out to a network. The big broadcast network then gives it to a broadcaster, and the broadcaster or your local affiliate then sends it to you for free. And here we have the television viewer, okay? Here we have the television viewer. Then, with the growth of cable, the production companies now give the content to cable or a cable channel. The cable channel then sells it to you and you pay a monthly fee, okay? And it goes through some type of distribution network through the MSO. Now we have the streaming channels, and now the content producers are creating distribution channels that are exclusively their own, kind of like the old day of movie theaters being owned by the movie studios, okay? So now it goes directly to the consumer, and it could bypass the broadcast networks, it could bypass the MSOs, and it could come directly to you. So we have all these distribution methods existing all at the same time. The explosion of the streaming channels is a great illustration of what we call the long tail, which some people argue is the new media model. And it is a very popular term. Many people use this concept now. Just as a refresher, in case you don't remember, in case you never heard this before, the blue line here indicates the old market. This is the old way of distributing product, okay? According to the old model, 20% of your inventory generated 80% of your profit, okay? I will repeat that. 20% of inventory generated 80% of your profit. This meant that if you were a bookstore, you would stock the best sellers because the handful of titles, the top 20% of titles is where you're going to get the bulk of your money. Or with movies, it's going to be the most popular movies, or with albums, it's going to be the most popular albums. So that's where the audience was located. Now, the argument now is that this red line indicates the new market. Over here, with the top 20%, you still have a handful of very popular media products. I mean, we still have things like The Avengers as a movie, very popular movie, okay? But over here, you have sort of this niche product, the obscure stuff, the stuff that on its own doesn't do great, doesn't do massive amount of business. But the idea is that if you are a someone who distributes media content, the focus is not over here on the top 20%. The focus is over here in the long tail. There's more obscure, random, niche content, but if you can offer enough of that to the consumer, that's where you're going to make more money. If you can provide a wide variety of content to cater to every possible interest, that is where you're going to make your money. And the streaming platforms are a great example of that because there is so much, almost an astonishing array of content that is available. What you are looking at here, and I admit it's difficult to see, especially if you happen to be watching this on your phone. This is a chart put together by Variety, a big trade publication in Hollywood. This was a report that they issued in August of 2021, a comprehensive overview of the SVOD landscape, that is subscription video on demand, more or less synonymous with streaming. And here are all the major players: Netflix, Hulu, Showtime, Peacock. Quibi has since been shut down. CBS All Access has been rebranded as Paramount Plus. The point of this is to show you that there are just so many different streaming platforms out there. However, despite the popularity of streaming, and I think for students in this class, streaming video is probably your preferred way to consume video. Here's a report from Nielsen. Nielsen is showing that as of the third quarter 2020, the average American 18 plus spent over 5 hours a day on video. The bulk of that time, however, is this blue. The bulk is blue, which is live and time shifted TV. And then we have green over here with the TV connected devices. I'm assuming that's where streaming is. And these are some other categories connected to watching video on the computer. Now, from third quarter 2018 to third quarter 2020, the amount of time devoted to live and time shifted TV has been going down. However, as of this recording, live time shifted TV is still the biggest category. Now, here's something else from Nielsen. When you look at video, 24% is coming from broadcast, 38% is coming from cable. I'm assuming satellite is probably lumped in with cable. I've talked about broadcasting and cable earlier in this lecture, and streaming here is 28%. Just another way of showing that streaming, despite how popular it might be with college students and people in this class, is really not yet the dominant way for people to consume video. And within streaming, surprise, surprise, Netflix is the biggest player. I have some more charts to show the dominance of Netflix. But first, I just want to talk quickly about some strategies that the streamers have developed. One is this policy of exclusive content, especially if it's coming from a corporate parent. Disney's going to show Disney movies or Marvel movies, etc. Paramount Plus is going to show things that are made by a Paramount related production company or a Viacom related production company. To me, this is a revival of the vertical integration strategy from the old Hollywood film studios. As you may recall, or maybe you don't recall, but Hollywood film studios used to own their own movie theaters so that they controlled not only the creation of that content, but also the distribution of that content. The Supreme Court many years ago ruled that to be illegal, but we are now seeing a revival of the same strategy under the guise of streaming. Short seasons, TV shows. When I was talking about syndication earlier, TV shows maybe had 22 or sometimes even 25 episodes in a year. We no longer have that traditional concept of a television season. So something could be 6, 8, 10, 12 episodes. And then when it's done, something fresh comes out right after it. So broadcast television decades ago would introduce new shows in September, October, in the fall. They would not introduce new content over the summer. And anything that showed up in the spring was just to replace something from the fall that happened to be canceled. Okay, that sort of rigid strategy is gone. Now we have new content coming out all the time. I mentioned Netflix dominance. Here is another chart showing that. I guess that's a chart. From 2020 to second quarter 2021, the percent of SVOD subscriptions that Netflix is controlling has gone down. So we are seeing the growth of other players in this space, but Netflix is still the biggest player right now. And here we see some indication of the fact that consumers are adopting multiple streaming platforms, okay, from 2018 to 2021. The bottom red here is the percent of individuals who had 5 or more streaming services. I do believe I would be in that category. And that is going up. And then people who have, 1 or more, 2 or more, et cetera, et cetera. But you can see people are adopting multiple streaming services. And here, finally, we have some estimated content spend from the major players in this space. And take a look at Disney. Netflix might be the major player, but it's estimated that Disney is going to spend more than $30 billion. Now, this does include spending on sports, but the bulk for all of these companies is not sports, okay? The bulk for these companies is not sports. It's sort of dramatic scripted programming or reality shows, things like that. And now I will conclude with some final thoughts. My prediction, this is my own personal prediction about television in the future, trying to look 10, 20 years down the road. I think traditional broadcast television will remain, but it will be limited to reality shows, live programming, and sports. Anything scripted, like the biggest sitcom or the next drama or the next mystery series, whatever, anything scripted is going to go directly to streaming platforms. That's my prediction. That's just my personal prediction. Okay, that's it. Wrapping up the lecture. Hope you learned a little bit of something. I'm now signing off.